Hi, my name is Blonnie Brooks. In June of 2016, I was diagnosed with metastatic breast cancer that had spread to my liver. So in January, just a few days ago, they decided to remove that portion of my liver. When I was trying to find out more about what to expect, I would find mostly websites that were just clinical descriptions of it instead of somebody talking and telling their personal experience. So today I wanted to talk about what to expect after a liver surgery. We decided this might be something that other people would be interested in hearing. One thing that benefited me a lot was a friend of mine who actually has worked as a nurse for other people going through liver surgery sent me a long description beforehand about what to expect, and I really appreciated that because it was in layman's terms and it was less clinical sounding. It was more from what my perspective may be. When you first get to the hospital, you'll just go to the check-in desk. After you get checked in, they'll take you to the pre-op area and they have you take off all of your clothes, give them to your loved one, or I assume put them in a locker if no one is there with you, but please have somebody there with you. So a lot of nurses went through and they put IVs in my arm and they told me a little bit about what was going to happen. And not only were the nurses there, but doctors came in, doctors that were going to be involved in the procedure, including the anesthesiologist who was telling me what they were planning to do. The nurses also put bands on my wrists, like hospital bands, including a band that said I was allergic to a certain medication. Make sure you tell these people any problems that you may have medically, because you never know what might be important to them. Any allergies that you may have, any past history of experience with anesthesia. For me, I had had an epidural with my daughter and my blood pressure crashed, so I made sure to let them know that because during liver surgery, you may have an epidural. Next process is another pre-op area where there's another nurse, and if you're going to get an epidural for the pain or any other anesthesia that they need to go ahead and put in before the surgery room, then this is the room that they'll do that. You'll be asked multiple times what your name is, your date of birth, and what is your surgery, and I assume this is for liability and safety reasons for the hospital. After this area, they take you to the surgery room, and for me, there were a lot of people in the surgery room. I did not expect it to be that full. I expected there to be the surgeon and maybe the nurse and an anesthesiologist, but there were more people in that room. I met them all. I don't remember what all of their purposes were, but then they move you from the bed that you've been on at this point onto the surgery bed. They put something in the IV that they had previously inserted in your arm. The last thing I remember is them putting an oxygen mask or something on my face, and then I don't remember anything else. They hook it up to the machine, and that's all I remember of that part.
It's 8:41 a.m. Blonnie is in surgery for about 45 minutes now. All I can do is sit and wait here in this family surgery waiting area. The waiting has been absolutely nerve-wracking, but there's good news. The surgeon came out and said everything went well.
After that, things are very hazy for me, so David is probably going to have to come in and say what happened next, but I remember waking up and David was there, and I remember he couldn't be there for very long because he could only be there for a few hours during a very small time period after the surgery, during the recovery.
The hospital allows only short visits after the patient is transferred to the post-surgery care unit. So I was barely able to say hi to Blonnie, and she did wake up, she said hi, she smiled a few times.
At the recovery room, I remember waiting for the hospital room for a little bit longer than normal, I think, but then eventually a hospital room opened up and I was wheeled to that area.
We're in the hospital after Blonnie's surgery. This is her room now.
And at this point I was waking up from the anesthesia, which can make you a little nauseous. From what I've heard of other people, they could be very nauseous. Thankfully it wasn't so bad for me, but I do remember going through a lot of turns and twists and thinking that I was getting car sick from that. I don't remember my pain levels, so they must not have been so bad. The pain medication must have been working very well. The first day that you're in the hospital room, you're pretty stuck to the bed. You can't really move around freely. You have a catheter inserted, so you don't have a reason to get up and go to the bathroom, but things are being taken care of.
Waking up and getting over a surgery like this sucks. You're all terribly uncomfortable. You're definitely in some amount of pain, which she is. She's managing it very well, by the way.
And you pretty much just stay in bed and try to get used to this new feeling. They also put some wrap thing around the bottom of your leg, which is basically filled with air, and it inflates and deflates periodically to make sure that the blood continues circulating and doesn't form a blood clot in your leg. This device is called a spirometer, and this is supposed to help your lungs reinflate, because during anesthesia your lungs actually don't work as efficiently as they would in normal life. So you have to breathe into this to make sure that your lungs fill completely to capacity again, or else you could risk a lung collapse or a lot of other bad things like pneumonia after the surgery. This is called a spirometer, and make sure you ask for one of these. I still can't do it very well. Basically, to use this, you just breathe in and try to get to the highest you can. You're supposed to get to the top, and at the very beginning of all this, I could only get to here. I was shocked. While you're in the hospital, you'll meet a lot of different people. For my room, there was always a nurse and a technician, but there were always extra people coming in doing a lot of stuff. So they check your blood pressure by putting the cuff on. They put something on your finger, and that's to check your oxygen level. And then they also check your temperature. Pain level, every single time they come in, they say, what's your pain on a level of 1 to 10? You'll be given a pain button and a medication. For me, it was something called Morphone, and I would push the button whenever I had pain. But honestly, you should just push the button about every hour or so, whenever you feel that you might be getting pain. Don't wait until you have pain. You should push the button before you have pain so that you don't get to that point. You're allowed to push it every 10 minutes, but I didn't want to push it that much because I felt like that was a little extreme, and I wasn't in as much pain as I expected. After the first day, they will remove the catheter, and then you have to get up and go to the bathroom when you have to go. They want you to get up pretty early after the surgery so that you start moving, because the faster you start moving, the faster you start healing. It takes a lot longer for your bowels to start moving. So that's another thing that they're always going to check on. Before you leave, they want to make sure that you can do number 2. I was not given much food on the first day. The second day, I was given a liquid diet. And I believe I had the liquid diet for 2 days before they said, okay, now that I think it was after my bowels did start moving, they said, now you can have solid foods. The anticipated time in the hospital for something like this is 3 to 7 days. And I was very lucky that my recovery was going well, so I got to go home on day 3.
You ready to go home?
I'm ready to go home.
Awesome, it's the time.
I can't wait.
Ta-da!
Because I'm very used to taking care of myself, and I feel awkward asking other people for help, but every single nurse at the hospital and every single person that I dealt with made me feel completely comfortable asking for help, and most of the time I didn't even ask for help because they were asking me if I needed anything and premeditating what kind of things I may need very, very well. It was weird to sleep in the hospital because on one hand I was given this pain medication that would knock me out, so I would fall asleep and feel that I went into a very deep sleep, and 5 minutes later, I looked at the clock, 5 minutes later I would be woken up by something. There was one point where every single hour, every 5 minutes, I was being woken up by somebody coming in the room, some machine beeping, or something going on that woke me up.
Whenever the machine started beeping, which happens probably 7 times a minute.
Different hospitals may have different rules for visiting hours, but in my case, we were very lucky at the University of Maryland that my husband David could sleep in the hospital room with me. He actually had a couch that turned into a bed, so it wasn't even that uncomfortable, at least from my perspective. Overall, this is a scary experience. You're going to be worried about what's going to happen, and a lot of things can happen. You don't know how your body's going to react to anesthesia, especially if you're like me, but none of those bad stories happened, and it wasn't as scary as I had anticipated. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this will help other people who are going through a liver surgery or a similar surgery in the future.
Why did you say the movie?
Because David told me to.
No, it was actually your idea.